House budget that just passed, and why?
Start this way.
I think you've heard me say enough about this House budget. This House budget is bad for the middle-class families, it's bad for taxpayers, it's bad for college students, it's bad for seniors, it's bad for the economy, it's bad for jobs. It is a bad budget. And we need someone down there to go to Washington and join the other members of Congress who say, enough is enough, stop. We are not passing a budget that's going to cut programs and increase taxes on middle-class taxpayers. So no, I would resoundingly vote no on that House budget.
I would vote no for any House budget that does not reduce our military spending and does not provide Medicare for all, does not provide $15 an hour minimum wage, does not provide better schools for our people. So I would vote no against that budget as well.
There are good parts of that budget, there are bad parts of that budget. And without a voice in Congress, no one representing the 11th Congressional District, nobody here was able to tell them what parts were good and what parts were bad. No one was able to sit there and tell them that what you're proposing now is going to hurt you and your family. And no one's been able to sit there and say, let's leave this in and let's take this out because this is harmful. That's the problem with having a vacant seat. If it was an up and down vote, I would have voted no. But I would have certainly sat there and advocated for you and your family and said, let's keep these tax cuts in for lower and middle class families. Let's try to balance the budget without raising people's taxes. Yeah, those are good things. There are bad things. There's no side. There's so much partisanship in Washington right now. I think all of you ought to be disgusted by that, because I am. If you ask the people of Staten Island, is Donovan a Republican or a Democrat? Half of them wouldn't know. I've never governed that way. You know what? There's good parts of Obamacare. I'm a Republican that will say that. There's good parts. No party has a monopoly on good ideas. What you need people who are going to stand up like I did against my own party when they didn't want to fund the Department of Homeland Security, and somebody who'd give credit to the other side of the aisle when we're not going to let insurance companies drop people for pre-existing conditions that Obamacare protects against, and certainly do things that are helpful to people. And just because it's 30 seconds. Just because it was an idea of the other side doesn't mean it has to be wrong. This partisanship down in Washington has to stop. The partisanship here has to stop. I will support a good Democratic idea and a good Republican idea, and I'll fight a bad idea no matter who's proposing it.
Well, I have to thank Dan, because his answer confirmed the fact that the Republican budget raises taxes on the middle class, and his answer just confirmed that. So I thank him for at least saying that, and that's what I've been saying all this evening. But when it comes down to it, it's his party that proposed this budget, and that's the party he's going to join if he's elected to Congress. And certainly, whether or not he had the opportunity to speak about it before it was put out, now that it's put out, you either have to vote yes or no on the budget. And frankly, if he is not with that party and votes with that party and votes for that budget, then he's in no man's land. He's in no man's land, and then he will never be able to go to his party to get anything to bring back to our community. So I think, Dan, you have to realize that you could say, yeah, some's good, some's bad, some's good, some's bad, but at some time you have to take a stand. You have to say, I'm going to vote yes, or I'm going to vote no. And if you vote yes, then you vote with the rest of that group that is raising taxes on us and cutting $13.4 billion in federal money to New York City.
I think you understand what I'm saying. Thank you. James wants to say something.
Yeah, and like, as you mentioned too, people are disgusted with the partisanship that's going on in Washington. That's why in New York we had 28% voter turnout, the 4th lowest in the whole country. Why is that? I think the main reason is because the Democrats and Republicans up here right now fighting against, the budget. And we need to get people of independent parties up in Congress. That's why I'm running as a Green Party candidate. Because I have ideas to have like a Green New Deal to fix a lot of these problems. And as I mentioned before, the constant money that we're spending on wars, bring that money back home. Fund our people. Don't fund killing other people.
Good evening, gentlemen. I would like to direct this to District Attorney Donovan. I hear everyone saying that they're sick and tired of the partisanship, and a lot of voters are. But you know what, and I would say to Mr. Donovan first, and if anybody would like to answer, from Barack Obama straight on down, the Democratic Party has done nothing but undermine the Constitution of this United States of America. Yes! The Attorney General, the top man in charge of this country, who sued Arizona over immigration laws when they're trying to hold up the federal law. Now they're trying to put through Loretta Lynch, who said she agrees that Obama has the right to bypass federal law and the Constitution. I want to know, Mr. Donovan, are you going to go up to Congress and fight for the American people to uphold the Constitution like everyone there swears they're supposed to do? And by the way, with illegal immigration, I think that people really need to get on board and start remembering that we're a sovereignty too, and we need to protect our borders before we start letting people who break the law get rewarded. By the way, God bless you. I'm going to vote for you. And excuse me also, Ted Cruz 2016. God bless America. God bless America. Well, I'll wait for an answer. I'm sorry. Yes, I know. I'm excited. I'm really excited. Listen, here's the thing. I want to know, as a U.S. Congressman, we need a voice that's going to stand for all people, but we need someone who's first and foremost, before party lines, are you going to stand up for the Constitution? That's the sworn oath of everyone who goes up to Capitol Hill, including the President. Will you uphold the Constitution? My question, will you? Oh, Diane, I'm sorry.
Diane, I uphold the Constitution of the United States every single day.
I know that, thank you. Okay, that's what I want to know. Thank you, God bless you. I'm voting for you, by the way. And I don't want to hear anything, actually, I really, with all due respect, I don't want to hear from you guys because honestly, I'm tired of seeing...
Not your choice! Not your choice! Whack job! Tea party whack job!
This is a Democratic debate.
Racism cannot be contained.
Yes.
Racism cannot be contained.
Listen, it's been a very, very good forum so far. Control your emotions. We need to conclude this in an orderly fashion. Just be nice. Finish it nicely.
Good for you, Alex. Well, I guess right here we just, honor the Constitution and your amendment to free speech right there. That's true. But, one of the things I would like to do is amend the Constitution.
That's right.
I mean, there's a lot of injustice going on. I mean, first of all, this Constitution was written when my people were slaves.
Hello. I'm sorry. Say that. I work hard.
Stop dividing everybody by race.
I work hard.
Mind your business.
Racism
Stop dividing everybody by race.
Black man to know his place?
Shut down, thank you. Drop the mic, you're done. Drop the mic, you're done. Mind your business.
Thank you. I'd just like to add briefly little context according to the woman before I'm a communist, so that's just a little bit of context.
Yeah, you're a communist.
My question for the three of you, Mr. Lane has alluded to his position, and I thank him for speaking to this. It is my view and view of many people that there's a nationwide epidemic of police violence that disproportionately impacts people of color, queer and trans people of color, undocumented people, poor people, indigenous people. I would like to hear from each of you. I don't want to hear a vague response about community policing. What alternatives to policing are you well versed on and do you support? The budget of the NYPD, I heard a recent estimate, is $4.7 billion. Every year, the city spends millions of dollars settling claims because people like you fail guide juries. By the way, DAs guide juries through the process. They do. Policing support and how you envision this.
Listen to that man. That's real statistics. Over 3/4 of the crimes in this country committed by minorities. Hey!
My question is, what alternatives to police? I said it twice. What alternatives?
You said a lot of your own opinions. I'm telling you.
My family doesn't commit crimes. And my family gets stopped by police.
That police the community.
Alright, so then we'll be closing in 5 minutes. Nobody here said they want to answer that question. Alright, next question.
Hi, I'm middle class now. I haven't always been, and the family that raised me certainly wasn't.
They're conservatives
and I hear a lot of really excellent statements supporting the working class and the middle class, but it seems like our candidates aren't talking about the lower class, and as if these voters and these lives don't matter. And additionally, I find it really incredibly frustrating that we pretend that our current economy isn't like musical chairs. When the music stops, there aren't enough jobs, and those people need 3 of them. My question is, what policies will our potential Congress members ask for to assist the lower class?
Thank you.
Ma'am? Hello? Students. Yeah. We have to help the needy. There's no one against helping the needy. I think
I don't know about
we're
that.
saying, I don't think there's anybody that doesn't want to help the needy. I think people have different ways of doing that. My particular way is if somebody's able to work, let's give them a job. Let's not make them dependent on government. You're right. Let's create them. That's what I'm saying. Encourage people. Don't let Rick Perry come to our district and encourage businesses to leave here and go to Texas. Make New York business friendly so the business stays and employs you or your friends or your family. Some of this stuff is not as complicated as people make it out to be.
Trickle down didn't work in the 80s.
I'm not saying trickle down. I'm saying let a corporation that's going to move to Texas and close, and 200 people here lose their job, and 200 people in Texas get hired.
New York State already has tax cutting measures that address this issue.
It's a question everyone answers.
As I said time and time again, we need to tax the richest. The 1% in this country can help pay for a lot of the middle class and lower class. I mean, and the divide between middle and lower is so minute anyway. I mean, what is middle class? What is lower class these days? We need to tax these people. We need to pull money away from military spending. And we need to have Medicare for all to help with small businesses, to help with self-employed people, and just to have a better public education system so people can get the education they need to get better jobs. And we need to have a Green New Deal for clean, green, renewable energy by 2030. We can make this happen. We just need to do it.
I agree that the difference between lower and middle class is more and more vague these days. And certainly I've been talking about the minimum wage, which is at that point. And certainly there are a lot of safety net programs that I would support and continue to support in Congress. So, but ultimately we have to stimulate this economy and move to get real jobs. And one of those ways to do it is to build infrastructure. And the president in his budget has proposed $500 million, I believe it's $500 million, to begin that process of rebuilding our infrastructure, which will create those types of good jobs and stimulate the economy to create other jobs. So that's what we have to do, create ultimately good jobs, and I think the president's budget is on that path.
Next question. This will be either the last question or the next last, depending on how quickly it goes.
So this question is for everyone on the panel. We heard a lot of really well-formulated questions tonight, I think, on a lot of issues that really matter to families like our own. But if you step back and look nationally, rather than working on issues like the ones we've heard tonight, we find the Republican Party passing laws that are discriminatory, like the one in Indiana. There's one proposed in Arkansas. When you get to Washington, what would you do to change the focus from those kinds of laws to the issues that were raised here tonight that actually matter to our families?
Yeah, I think you're right, Jamie. Around the country, Republicans are focusing on laws that ultimately I think will be found to be discriminatory and should be found to be discriminatory, when we should be focusing on what the national interest is, both our international security, our security, but also our internal economy. And that's what we should be talking about, instead of focusing on these types of things that happened in Indiana. I believe another law in Arkansas just got passed. So you're right. I think the focus of those Republicans in those states is absolutely off the mark, and we in Congress really have to keep our nose and our focus where it should be.
I really don't have much to add to that. I'm really embarrassed to say. I'm just going to pass it off right now.
I mean, we shouldn't discriminate against anyone in our country. We're all Americans. We should respect that. I'm not in favor of those discriminatory laws that you just spoke of. We should focus on our country, and we should focus on our foreign affairs. I mean, as I said before, our enemies are testing us right now, and our allies are questioning us. They don't feel the support that they have felt before. And that is something that's got to change. It's caused by this current administration. I was in Washington when Netanyahu spoke at the Congress, and he spoke about the region, not just Israel, but the region. That's Arab nations too are in jeopardy over there if Iran gets a nuclear weapon. And our government wants to negotiate further rather than impose sanctions. Everyone else is in favor of sanctions.
There already are
sanctions. In favor of sanctions. So I think what we have to look at is, and if you saw the other day, Iran already pulled out of one of the agreements. They were going to give their stockpile over and get it out of the country, and they just told us the other day, we're just not doing it. So you're right. We have to start concentrating on these large issues that affect our nation as a whole, but I'm certainly against any discriminatory laws.
Okay, we're going to closing. Vincent,
Well, thank you all for being here tonight. You know, the Staten Island newspaper every day on its front page counts the number of days that we do not have representation in Washington. And I think the count now is up to 85 days that they have on the front of their newspaper. You know, I beg to differ. It's not 85 days that we have not had representation in Washington. It's been 4.5 years that we haven't had representation in Washington. As we see the Republicans defunding Homeland Security, shutting down the government, and our Congress members not bringing federal money into this district. There's been no protection of seniors on the economic status of the middle class, and it's going to continue. How do I know? Just look at what they propose now, the Republicans being in leadership in the House. Their budget would cost $13.4 million in revenue to New York City. That is the budget that they voted on last week. And who gets hurt the most? The middle class. We here in the middle class, because a budget is the reflection of the values of the people who put the budget together. And so we know the values of the Republicans are reflected in this budget. Even Peter King, the Republican congressman, said he's embarrassed by some of the things that are in that budget. So if you have, we talked about this tonight, if you have a college student, you're going to pay more under this budget if it becomes law. If you're a veteran, this budget hurts you because this budget, the Republicans have proposed, funds veterans almost $2 billion less than the president had asked for in his budget. And you know what the problems we've had with the VA hospital. The Republicans totally just ignore the problems with the VA hospital. You want to build roads and bridges and create jobs? Well, the Republicans cut almost $200 billion in transportation funding under their budget. They cut other programs and other benefits enjoyed by middle-class families. And the independent studies I said before suggest that under this Republican plan, if it becomes law, would cost typical working family members their increased taxes by $2,000 a year, while the wealthiest taxpayers would get a tax break by reducing their top tax rate to 25%. So you see how critical it is to send someone to Congress to join the others who will stand up and say, enough, it's time to protect the middle class, working class taxpayers of this country. That's what I want to do. I have a vision to do that. I have a plan to do that. I have the energy and passion to do that. So give me the green light on May 5th and go with who you know, and that's me, and make me your next United States Congressman. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming tonight and participating. Like I said, we all believe in the democratic process. I think it's wonderful that so many people turned out, and there's probably about 4 of you in the room who haven't decided who you're voting for yet. So I appreciate you listening to all of us. Tip O'Neill was the Speaker of the House for many, many years in Boston. He lived across the street from this woman, and said to her on election day, "Thank you, Mrs. McGillicuddy, for voting for me." And she yelled across the street, "I didn't vote for you today." And Tip O'Neill said to her, "You lived across the street from me for nearly 50 years. You didn't vote for me?" And she said, "You never asked me. I'm asking you for your support. I'm asking you for your vote." There's 13 members of Congress in the New York City delegation. Right now there's 12 Democrats and 1 vacancy. But the Republicans control the House and the Republicans control the Senate. Who do you think they're going to look towards representing New York? The hell. Who do you think they're going to look towards for their opinion about? And as I said, there's too much partisanship going on. But there's a reason why people have crossed party lines in Staten Island. Last time I ran, I got 68% of the vote. The time before that, we got 67% of the vote. There's not enough Republicans, conservatives, or independents on Staten Island to elect me. Democrats elected me. With good reason. I've never governed as a Republican, or an independent, or a conservative. I've governed as a public servant. So if you want somebody to go down to Washington, and you think some of these things that the Republicans are doing in Congress are wrong, and you'd like somebody to tell them how it's going to hurt you and your families, the person that's going to be at the table of the 3 of us is me, if you vote for me. So I'm asking you, as Tip O'Neill didn't ask Mrs. McGillicuddy, I'm asking you to look at the people of Staten Island. I never had the opportunity to represent any of you before. Those of you who are from Brooklyn, I know there's some Staten Islanders here. For those of you from the Brooklyn portion of the district, I've never had the opportunity to represent you. I want that opportunity. And when you're sitting there saying, should I take a chance on this guy Donovan or not? Ask the people of Staten Island, how well has he represented you? Do you think he was a good public servant? And be guided by that if you're on the fence. Those of you who haven't decided who you're going to vote for in this room tonight, I'd ask you to consider voting for me.
That last statement has me a little bit queasy because I've been doing a lot of campaigning on Staten Island, and they have not been happy with the way Donovan handled the Eric Garner case. So I have to say that. And they're actually a little afraid of what would happen if a person like that would be in Congress. But I will say at the beginning of this debate, I asked you to imagine how we as a people can take the power back from these corporate powers and back into the people's hands. And tonight we yet again, we've seen arguments between the 2 parties and really no solutions. And you know, we talk about expanding our militarization and tightening our immigration policies, like in the guise of terrorism. And these are things that just aren't just in a lot of situations. And I'm running to represent all the people, fairly and justly. A lot of talk about money spending is not really going back into what we need to do in our education systems. We need to fund our education systems so we can stop this pipeline to prison that we have, where kids are not being properly educated.
Already set up.
You know, as I said before, when I was running for public advocate, we're selling off our public libraries for developers. These are all corrupt issues that we need to stop. I want to stop this business of usual that we're seeing in Congress. A lot of our politicians, a lot of our corporate politicians are owned by the corporations, and you can see this in the decisions that they make. And it's just not right. And I'm running as the Green Party candidate here, and I've said this many times. I'm talking about a Green New Deal, but people might say, well, what is a Green New Deal? Well, the Green New Deal is a concept that we can build a better economy with tearing away from our fossil fuel addiction and building an economy that works to build clean, green, renewable energy by 2030. As I mentioned before, there's a study that shows that this can be done in New York State. And if we start in New York, we can take this across the whole country. So all these talks about pipelines, all these talks about TPP and NAFTA, all these discussions can just end, and we can have a better life for our children and the future of the whole world. One of the things I want to really talk about right now is, and I've mentioned before, is I really want to push in Congress for a $15 an hour minimum wage now. This would just bring us up to the inflation standards that we had years ago, 20, 30 years ago. We need people to have a minimum wage in this that makes sense. And then we need to go up from there. And this minimum wage is for all workers. And of course, one of the things that's really personal to me is about independent investigations of these police brutality cases. I mean, like we said before, we've seen time and time again that once you have these crimes happen within the district, and the district attorneys and the judges, they're all friends. These are not.
Talk about it.
These are just not right. And this is one of the reasons why I decided to run. And this is something that resonates through me
Too much corruption.
till this day. And we need to stop it. So, all that being said, what I would like everybody to think about is that I want to represent your district. Like I said before, I'm not a politician. I'm a political activist, and I want to make real change. I want to really help the people that have been affected by Sandy. I want to help the people that have been affected by police brutality, and I want to help communities that don't even think they need help yet because they're so busy working all the time with 2 or 3 jobs. And so I ask you this evening to vote for me on the Green Party line on May 5th, because I'm not the career politician that's just going to make a promise to you right now. I'll actually make some changes when I get into the office.
Woo!
That's what I have to say. Thank you.
I want to thank you all for coming.